Don't forget to follow us on our social media pages. Like, share, and subscribe. This podcast is sponsored by the following. Remington, made with pride in the USA. Iconic American impact. Wenig custom gun stocks. Head on down for your custom fitting. Remember, winners shoot Wenig. Shot Tracker, like having a coach on your barrel. For more info, go to takeaimtech.com. Life is too short to miss. RM Shooting Clinics, helping shooters from coast to coast. Have Ricky take your game to the next level. Zach Nannini at Northwestern Mutual. Trusted advice from someone you know. We believe in putting people first. Other supporters for Trap Talk. The Nevada State Trapshooting Association. Don't miss their 75th annual state shoot this October in Las Vegas. The NSTA puts on some great shoots, and they're going big for this year's state. Go to nvtrap.com to check out their program and all other shoots as well.
Welcome to another episode of Trap Talk. I'm the host today, Richard Marshall Jr. We got our co-host today, Zach Nannini. This is a little different episode. I'm going to be interviewing Zach. We haven't done an episode on him yet. So welcome to the show, Zach.
Well, thank you, Ricky. This is nice for a change. I know when we started this podcast, you are episode 1, the great Richard Marshall Jr., and it only took like 30 episodes to get to the Zach Nannini episode. So we're ready. We're ready to go.
Well, we had to go down the line, and we always worry about other people. And when you asked me to co-host this with you after the first episode is when we, kind of everything got fallen into place. And then I guess you kind of dwindled down, and we just decided that we would jump in and do that episode today. So a little history on Zach. Zach's an 8-time All-American. He was 3-time men's team. He's 1-time sub-junior, 3-time junior. One of those is a captain, and then one is a junior gold. So Zach has worked his way from sub-junior, junior gold, now men's. Maybe he'll get sub-vet, and then vet, and then senior vet. So he might be the first one to get all the All-Americans, if he's living a clean life. So
yeah, I gotta watch the meat consumption on that, and I'll be able to make it.
The red meat. Zach's also a 3-time California state champion, and he's also a 3-time current Missouri state champion. Zach's got 2 Grand Slams, 200s from the 27 in ATA, and then he does have 100 in non-registered shoot at Martinez, California, which, in my opinion, is one of the toughest places to shoot handicap, let alone any target. And we'll get back on that discussion in the show about his 100 at Martinez. But Zach's broke around 30 to 40 hundreds and doubles. He's been shooting since 2004. He's a 5-time collegiate national champion with Lindenwood. He was also their captain of the, the trap squad, or is that what it is, Zach? I guess they had.
I was captain of the trap team with Lauren Mueller. She was the ladies' captain. I was the men's captain during my tenure there.
So Zach's got a lot of credentials, and we'll dive into those here as we get the podcast rolling. So welcome to the show.
Thank you, Ricky. It's an honor to be here. It's a little different not leading it, so I'll try to be as comfortable as I can. But so far, you've put me at ease.
Well, we might get into some questions. No. So, Zach, how did you get started shooting? I mean, I met you when you were a young kid, you and your sister and your mom.
Yep.
Then I'd occasionally see your dad, because he was working. You guys were homeschooled.
Yeah,
I know that. So how'd you get started into trap shooting?
So it was a little bit of a long story, and I'm going to try to tighten it up as much as possible. But really, my mom's the one who got me into shooting first. She really wanted me to have gun safety because my dad owned a gun. He was just an Italian with a pistol in the house. And, my mom didn't want me to find it. And at the time, even as a young boy, I always was thumbing through like guns and ammo magazines and like Nerf guns or whatever. I just innately wanted to be around guns, loved gun movies. And so we went out and shot rifles and pistols. And I was, so me and dad would go out and shoot, once a week. at the 10th Street Range and started going to gun shows and buying stuff. Fast forward a few years later, because that was like when I was 12. I was with my dad on a job site, and we were trading windows for paint. So my dad's a painting contractor. He owns a painting construction company, Master Brush Painting, in San Jose, California. And we had a friend named Tim Silvera, and he was giving us windows in our house, and we were painting his house. So I was actually there that day, and we seen Tim had all these gun safes, and we're like, "Hey, Tim, when do you go shoot? We've never seen you at the range." And he's like, "Well, I shoot trap." And we're like, "What's trap?" And they're like, "Well, that's way more fun than that rifle pistol stuff you guys been shooting. You got to come out and try it." So that Wednesday, he invited us up to Metcalf Field Sports Park, which I believe was the old Winchester Range in San Jose, California, and went out and shot Wednesday night. And I borrowed an old 1100, and I mean, I'm not 100% sure I have the scorecard, but I think I hit 20. 20 was my first round ever at like 13 years old. And at that time, I loved it. So my mom, my dad, they were real supportive. My dad had never really shot, but now he started to get into it, and he'd just go with me. And we joined a Wednesday night league, and we started shooting league. So every Wednesday at Metcalf, 50 targets, 25 from the 16, and then 25 from handicap. And we did that for a while. And it took, I don't know, Rick, about a year until I got into ATA. So at the beginning, it was all league shooting, night shooting, South Bay, North Bay at the time. And then what propelled me into my next thing was I met Bob Graves at the range. And Bob Graves was kind of my first real mentor at the time. At the time, he was the AA 27 guy at the club, and everybody kind of looked to him to say, "Hey, what do you do? How do you do it?" And he'd been shooting ATA, and he's the one that dragged me into ATA and started putting me down that path of becoming a competitive shooter. And in 2004, that's where I shot the first state shoot I ever shot, was at California Golden State Trapshooting Association, Kingsburg Gun Club. And we went down there and experienced that. And that experience, what I seen down there and what I experienced, changed my life forever, to be honest with you. So that's how I got started. And then it evolved in a lot of ways, for sure.
Now, so you said that changed your life forever in a good way? I mean,
so at the time, I'm shooting, I think an XT trap, just new kid, averaging, maybe 90s, right? I'm not a great shooter by any means, but I get there. And at the time, Kingsburg was lush and beautiful and green. And have you been to Kingsburg before, Rick?
I've not. That's the one state shoot. One of them I haven't been to, and I wanted to go, but it's always during Ohio or Nebraska. And I go to Ohio more than I do Nebraska, and then when they're off, but we'll see. Maybe here in the future when it's off of Ohio, maybe we'll venture back to California. We could shoot as non-residents and maybe beat up on Rich Bullard.
That's my favorite thing to do. So really, Kingsburg was an oasis. So it was beautiful green campground everywhere you go, behind a peach orchard. So there's these peach orchards in this area, and you just kind of cut through this farmland, and then you cut through this tunnel of peach trees, and then you get to it and you open up and there's this gun club with 50 traps, and you're like, "Oh my God, I'm in heaven." Like it's just beautiful.
Like parting the trees.
It is. It's like you're partying in there, and it's beautiful. And then when you show up, at the time, a lot of these machines were handsets, and they just threw a great target. The weather was always beautiful. They had a big river that ran through the gun club on the left-hand side. So there was always people out by the water and barbecues and stuff. And what I remember more than anything was the first Saturday, because I only came up, I think, for 4 days my first time. But Saturday was a singles championship, and I was looking under the lights, and I remember seeing, Sean Hawley. I remember seeing Dave Kelly. I remember seeing Benitez. I remember seeing like all of these greats that were, of shooting. Jimmy Heller. At the time, Steve Smith. And I just was watching them hit a target in a way that I didn't think was possible. I mean, they were hitting it with authority. And I was like, man, I'm
Yep.
over here with my modified choke and my XT, and I'm just kind of blasting away. And these
Slinging.
guys are just obliterating these things. And all I could think to myself is, I want to be out there with those guys someday. I want to get to the point where I can shoot those scores and hit targets that hard. And so I started working on it. I started working on it as hard as I could, for sure.
So who helped you then in the beginning, as far as like with your fundamentals? Was that old, Bill Groves, Bob Graves?
So I would say Bob Graves. His AKA name is Bill Groves, and we're not going to talk about why, but but Bob Graves and me formed an amazing friendship at the beginning, and I was just the young kid, and I was always the guy that wanted to work hard. Bob was the guy where he'd come out and he'd shoot 1 or 2 flats a night in practice, and I'd want to be there right there with him. And instead of shooting 16s, we're always shooting 27. And I was a 20-yard guy, but I was shooting 27 right off the bat. And I think that's why I had such a quick movement from the 20-yard line to the 27. Once I started shooting ATA, I believe it was a little less than a year, and I punched all the way back to the fence. Because I made 2004, I started. 2005, I was a sub-junior All-American. And I remember being at the Grand in 2005, the last one in Vandalia, I was on the 27. So,
oh, really?
I had made it there. I actually punched to the 27 shooting PITA, and then my known ability punched me to the 27 because I won the Grand Pacific handicap. So I went up to the Grand Pacific, and I was on the 26-yard line. I broke a 99 there and won a nice half-ounce gold coin buckle and got my name in the book. And that was my physical 27-yard punch, I believe. And then I had to shoot 27 and physically earn it. But it took me a little while after that, but I did it. I think I got it at Sage Hill, maybe like the Golden West Grand back in the day.
Yep.
So it was a pretty fun time because new to shooting, went to the Grand American Vandalia, got a lot of stuff done right there. I remember that first year I won B-class doubles champion at the Grand America. I had a 99. So those were like at the beginning, like I thought those were the greatest things that I was ever going to do. Like that in my mind, I was like, man, I made it. I won B-class doubles and it was over. Right.
Yeah.
And then you look back at it and you're like, wow, I've come kind of a far way since then.
Yeah. Well, and that's, and for all our listeners out there, Zach and I both have been fortunate to win a lot of stuff. And some of my cherished stuff is D class at my local gun club. Or I got a trophy in my office here I'm looking at right now. It's the 1988 sub-junior class doubles champion at the Grand American. And it was like, that is one of people are like, why do you have that displayed? I'm like, because it's important. That was our start. Now, for you, when did you run into the great infamous Dave Kelly? Our buddy.
So at the time, let's say 2005, I'm shooting with Bob a lot. I'm training a lot. I'm hitting a couple shoots across the country, not anything crazy. And then that's when I start to say, you know what, I'm going to take this seriously and I'm going to start to chase this All-American deal. And Dave Kelly at the time, that 05 to 2000 and, really 10, 11, 12 area was just dominating the state of California. He was winning, 1-2 state titles a year. He was, pretty much attacking every single handicap. And he was one of the guys that I was looking up to. I mean, he was like, okay, Dave's the guy to shoot with. And once I got to the point to where I was 27 and I, AA, I was shooting with Dave a lot. So, I either shot with Bob Graves a lot and their squad, or I shot with Dave Kelly. And I'd say Dave started integrating me more once I had made the All-American team a few times. I probably didn't shoot as much with Dave until I was in the junior category where, I was, I guess after I made junior captain in 09, that was where I believe Dave went on his run. I was either the year before that or the year after that, but I remember he would call me and say, hey, Zach, how do these points work? What is this? What's going on? How do I add them up and all this stuff? And at the time, I was really good at it. Now Ricky's way better at it than me. But at the time, like I was a nerd and I knew how to figure it all out and do
No, wait,
everything. And I was
wait.
very, very passionate about wanting to be the captain. That was my goal.
Yeah. Now the counting, you struggled with it. Now you're really good. But
Better.
back then,
you do anything long enough, you learn. But at the
Yeah.
time, like I said, we had Sean Hawley in the state. We had
Yeah.
Jimmy Heller in the state. You had Benias still shooting. He had
Oh, yeah.
won. He hadn't won the handicap and the California title yet, so he was hunting for it every year. You had other shooters in California that were just always in the mix.
Yeah.
And like I said, Bob, his height was he ran 100 straight in the California state handicap and won it. So he could shoot. He just never went around the country, right?
Yeah.
And then I think another big turning point was when you came out and did that clinic, and I think that was before I was actually the captain. But
I think that was in
08,
that might have been like 08.
08, yeah, it was 08.
I think.
So Sunnyvale Rod Gun Club was the other gun club that I practiced at a lot. And Ricky and me got in touch, and basically he said, "Hey, if you can, get a group of guys together, I'd love to come out and stay with you, and I'll teach you and all that." I said, "Well, why not? Everybody wants to learn from Ricky Marshall." And so Ricky came out, stayed with us. We had a great time, and I've been semi involved in his life since then. And then obviously to this point, a lot more involved. And it got to the point where when I went to college at Lindenwood, I was driving through the first time from California to St. Charles, Missouri, in my Honda CRV, and I actually stopped at Ricky's house and stayed. And he said, "Hey Zach, do good in school, don't be a dumbass, and you'll be fine." And went to school and did that. And I think over the years, we've obviously gotten a lot closer. But at the time, I was just a kid.
Yeah, actually, and going back to like when I was out at your house doing the clinic, I remember very, very, just bam, right in my face that your mom's like, "Here's where you're staying." I'm like, "Man, this is your extra room? This is cool." "Oh no, this is Zach's room. He's sleeping on the bed underneath the staircase." I was like, "What?" And Zach got kicked out of his room, and I was out there for several days teaching, and great group of guys. That's when if I remember correctly, was it Ferdy?
Ferdy Abraham,
Abraham was in that clinic. Old Bob.
Yeah.
And then Bob afterwards won the California handicap. I remember getting the call. He's like, hey, guess what? And I go, "What?" And he goes, "I won the handicap." And I'm like, "What handicap?" And he's like, "I broke 100 in the handicap in California." So it's always a great feeling. And like with you, Zach, as a young kid, you were welcome in our family, as everybody is. We have open door policy. I'm a college coach, so same deal. Never leave anybody out. Zach was a lot of fun. He had the same drive that I did as a young kid. I could see. And then we all used to play cards at Vernal and stuff, and a lot of the shoots. And then you progressed when you stopped, and the conversation wasn't do good in school. It was, you can screw around for 4 years in college and then bust your butt for 40, or bust your butt for 4 years and then screw around for 40. And Zach had graduated with great grades. I used to fly in down there, and I taught at the KBS club, Mulberry Grove Aces team. And Zach, I said, "Hey, why don't you help me?" And I paid him, and he kind of got into the clinic stuff that way. And then I just turned that over to him and said, "Hey, it's more financially better for him to do it than me flying in and such." So that's kind of how Zach got started with the clinics, and he currently teaches clinics. So if anybody wants a lesson, you can go to ZachNannini.com.
That's my spot. I did just teach the KVS kids a month ago. We just had a clinic, and there was 2 days, and that was great. And my first clinic was with Ricky, so it was one of those things where I got to watch his style of teaching, and I would say that my style of shooting and teaching is very similar to Ricky's style, just because I think it's what I think is the most fundamentally true to shooting. I think if you look at driving from the base of the house to the target, always keeping the target in sight. That just seems like a more consistent approach than the other approaches that I've shot. And I've shot a lot of different ways. Shooting as many targets as I have over my life, I tried a lot of different things. Some worked, some didn't. Some worked for certain days and some didn't, right? It's just one of those things where it was trial and error. And I was with Bob Graves, I was the king of testing things. So what we would do is we would say, hey, what happens if we adjust the comb this way? What happens if we adjust the rib that way? What happens if we change shades of glasses? What happens if we shoot faster, slower? I mean, we would go out there and do it the wrong way 250 times just to see what it did. And then say, okay, this is what we need to do, right? And when you cut it all down, I'd have probably been better off just doing the one thing I knew and never changing it instead of constantly looking for a different technique or a different ability. But where it comes handy now is when somebody's messing up, I can see it really quickly and I can know, okay, hey, you're doing this and it's probably because of this. Because it's always usually the thing before you did that causes the thing that you're doing. It's your hand position, your feet position, your look point, your gut hold point, all those things are gonna differ what's going on out there. And that's a gift, I think. Just me and Bob, and we talk on the phone about it every day, 30 minutes. Hey, we're working on this. What are you thinking? And it was just always on my mind. It was the thing that I loved more than anything else at the time. And I stayed with it for sure. And some of the fondest memories I have were then traveling the country. I remember, my mom pulling the fifth wheel to Vernal, Utah, because my dad had to work. He couldn't go. And so we went together and, I broke my first 100 straight from the 27 there and the big money handicap. And I had all the money played on that one. So that was a good one. I remember sitting there with you and Leo and Buxman, or at the time it was
I think Pat McCarthy was there.
Pat was there, and we were playing cards all day long in the clubhouse, and just there. And even in Florida, I remembered Southern Grand going out there and playing cards and just in between events and just learning and having a good time. And I just loved it. I felt at home. Everybody was always welcoming and I got to spend a lot of time with great shooters like yourself. I got to spend a ton of time with Dave Kelly. I got to spend a ton of time with Sean Hawley. I actually drove across the country with him before, which was an amazing experience. And it helped build the character and the game that I have a little bit from everybody. I think Dave really was the one that got me to the next level, though, because he was so competitive. He was just so dominatingly competitive, and I felt like I was at some level on his tail, and I was trying to get up there, but you were just reaching for it. You had to reach to get on top of him because the guy was so dominant. I mean, I could go out there and shoot 99, 96, 99, and he'd shoot 100, 97, 100. And, at the time I felt like, oh man, I had a great day. Well, it was for me, but for him, that was just his speed limit. So, he spending time with him and shooting with him, he was very dominant at what he did, and he wanted to win as much as anybody I've ever met. And he taught me that killer instinct of, when you're there, finish it, right? Get it done.
And that's one thing with Dave, because Dave traveled with me when he wanted to make the All-American team. I said, come on, let's go to these shoots. We traveled together, and that's one of the things with Dave, and he's back shooting, and he struggled with some flinching, and I'll have to have Dave on the show for sure.
100%.
But so let's go back a little bit, your college career. So you spent 5 years at Lindenwood because you got a master's, not just because you wanted an extra year. So that's a good thing. And you got a degree in financial planning, correct?
Yep. So I got a MBA.
Yeah.
And then a bachelor with an emphasis in marketing. I took a lot of finance courses at the time.
Yep.
I wasn't 100% sure I was going to get into finance. It kind of fell into my lap through shooting. Yep. So, for Lindenwood, got there, was the co-captain with Lauren Mueller. We won 5 national championships. I had a great, great time. And that's where I started to open my brain to other games. The first time I shot sporting clays was at Lindenwood. skeet, Lindenwood. I never shot anything but trap until I got to Lindenwood. And so it gave me diversity of learning how to shoot with a shotgun and do different things.
Yeah.
And also I got to pick the brains of some of the greatest young sporting clays and skeet shooters and Olympians like Morgan Kraft and other people that were, winners, right? And it was a petri dish of 105 winners that all wanted to win and, developed bonds that have lasted forever. I mean, my squad mate now, Zach Bryant, was my roommate from Lindenwood. So, it's just, these people are in my life. They mean everything to me. And my current position as a financial advisor, financial planner, I got that position because one of the guys on the team, Corey Spruill, was an intern at Northwestern Mutual. And he said to me, Zach, I don't think this is for me. I mean, I prefer to be more in the office environment managing. He said, I think you're more of a people person. I think you should, get an interview here and see what happens. And so he actually got me connected with a guy named Doug Barry, who's my mentor, and got me into the business. And so I graduated with my master's degree on a Friday, and on Monday morning I started, and I've never looked back. So
nice.
So just stayed in it, and surround yourself with good people, and good things happen.
So let's go into one question I'll throw at you. What drives you? What drives you in shooting?
I have a lot of goals. I would like, my first goal that I had in California was to be the Crown 5 winner, which means winning each of the 5 titles. And I got 3 of the titles, and then I actually moved. And that was kind of sad for me because I'm like, man, I want to be in the book with Benias, with Alcariza, with Kelly, the other guys that won the 5 titles. So now that I'm in Missouri, I want to do the 5 titles in Missouri. That's my thing that I want to get, all.
So what are you missing?
Singles, handicap, and doubles right now. So I got the overall, the all around, and I got twice on the overall. But so, and I've been shooting as a Missouri resident now since 2017 or 18, so not a long time, but just a few years, right? The last year that I shot the California State Shoot as a resident, I think I either won the all around or the overall. I can't remember, but so that's a big driving factor for me. I really want to get into the Hall of Fame in Missouri. I'd really love to get into the Hall of Fame at the ATA level someday, but I got a whole lot of shooting to get to that point. Another is to at least win a ring at the Grand at some point in time. So, these are the things that I'm writing down on my list. I guess a higher goal than that would be win one of each of the rings. I got a long way to go though. I've got to get into a lot of shooting to win, one of the each. And you look at guys like KO, he did it. You got Pat Lamont, he did it. But then even someone like Leo Harrison didn't do it. And Leo's got more rings than anyone. So, I mean, these are very lofty goals. But one thing I've learned is if you set your goals really, really high and you fall short, you still got some stuff, right? I absolutely rather set my stuff really, really high. The current things that I'm trying to work on are maintaining the 99 average in singles. I think that's very hard. I've done that a couple times, and that's like every time I go out there to shoot singles now, I'm very focused on doing that. I've had high 97s in doubles average, and my next goal is to get it above 98 consistently average. And I'm a believer, like Pat Lamont, the averages drive everything. So, I'm not an average shooter, but if I can keep my singles average above 99 and my doubles average above 98, I'm going to be there most times. I'm going to be there more consistently than not. And especially when I'm not honey picking the shoots. I was just in Florida and it was not nice. Okay. And I'll go to any shoot in the country, and I don't care how bad it is. I'll shoot it. I'm not going to be worried about the target that they throw. And I think that makes me a better shooter because I'm learning how to shoot high targets, low targets, windy targets, fast targets, soft targets, and that range. And I guess the best advice I could give anyone is go to different shoots around the country, get exposed to different targets. That Midwest target is different than an East Coast target. It's different than a West Coast target. You got these guys that shoot only altitude birds in Utah or in, Montana or whatever. And then they come to the Grand and they experience sea level. It's a whole nother deal, right? It's
targets move around. They do different things. And And with you, Zach, and that's one thing I'll say, Dave Kelly's one, Sean Hawley's one, that travels around or did travel around a lot and could shoot coast to coast. And that's one of the things, and I look at it, and you take someone like Sean Hawley, down in the house like I do, I think that helps you going from coast to coast and north, south, wherever gun club you're at. If you're just like we had Jason Fulvag on last, Jason's on the house. Why? Because you can always see the target, and that's one thing. So, we get what drives you. And I think the goals are important for all our listeners and new shooters is set those goals. I hammer that into my students' heads. Set goals. That's one of the number one most important things. And I can tell everybody, I've been around Zach since he started, and Zach has always asked questions. And just, and that's what I tell everybody, ask questions. So any of our listeners, send stuff into us, ask questions. We'll do another question answer episode, but I got a couple more questions for you. One is, what's the best thing about trap shooting to you?
I think it's the people and the fun. I mean, I think
I agree.
Having fun and seeing the people have changed my life. And it's great to shoot the scores. And I'm constantly driving to get better, and I'm practicing to get better. But more than anything, the relationships that I've developed and the trust that you have there, and just the quality of the character. I mean, you can leave your $20,000 gun on the rack all day long, and it's going to be there at the end of the day.
At some shoots, that is.
Well, yeah. I mean, at least when I started, that was how it was. I mean, it's getting a little worse nowadays, depending on where you go, obviously.
Yeah.
And there's crime obviously everywhere, but I think that that's more from the people affiliated with it, like the pullers, scorers, in certain areas, or other people that kind of are coming there to scam things, than it is the physical shooters. I don't think that there's a lot of bad people in the group.
No, you won't find a better group than shooters, whether it be trap skeet or sporting. All the shooters. I mean, I shoot all the games as I'm getting Zach into shooting more sporting. He just travels internationally for sporting, though. He don't shoot
only
much
stuff.
But that's one of the things. Now, one of the big questions is your practice routine. What do you do that differs and makes you the shooter that you are compared to myself? And I think growing up, you're doing the same stuff I did back then. But tell the listeners
I think it shifted a lot between when I started and where I am now.
Yep.
When I started, I can remember going up to Sunnyvale with a bucket of bullets, which had 500 shells in it, and I would shoot until all those shells were gone. So I was a big believer in target count. So at the time, I was fundamentally working fundamentals and target count and stressing the body. So not only was I doing, 100 to 300 gun mounts a day, every day to get ahead of the curve, I was in California where we could shoot 12 months of the year. So my growth was so rapid. My averages went up so fast within a year, went from low 90s to high 90s within a matter of a year, because I was focused on a few things. One, holding still before I call pull. Two, making sure that my head stayed on the gun all the way through the shot. Three, I worked a lot of doubles drills where I would shoot 250 to 500 doubles in an afternoon. And I was very focused on rotation and getting my eyes over to that second bird as quickly as possible. So breaking that first target clean and looking at the second target and setting variants of height. So, high birds, low birds, all that kind of stuff. And I would do a lot of station work. I mean, I at the time, if I had trouble on one, I would set the hard left. I'd shoot a box from one. I'd go to post 5. I'd set a box, shoot a box of rights. I mean, that was all the stuff that I was doing then. Now, I think I'm more in the frame of that perfect practice, kind of like the Bartholos talked about. I want to go out and I want to break 25 singles the right way. And I want to make sure that the things that I'm doing, from when I, get to the post, my feet are in the same spot. I start from the feet up. I work myself up till I'm ready. I know my hold points. I know where I'm looking for the bird. I get the gun there, and I want 25 clean shots. And if I break those 25 right off the bat and I break them hard, then I might move to handicap or I might move to doubles. but it's not one of those things where I'm going out and I'm working singles drills unless there's an issue. Now lately my handicap has not been what I've wanted it to be. So guess what? I've been going out, and shooting handicap. Yeah, I don't know.
You can come and I can help you.
Oh, and I've been working on making sure that I'm driving into the target the right way, because my opinion, there are 3 separate games. You've got singles where you're looking at the target, you're being really smooth, really methodical, and you're driving it out, and you really can't almost shoot it too slow, in my opinion. You're just kind of get to it and shoot it, trigger control. Doubles, I'm pretty aggressive on that first shot, and then I'm pretty smooth on that second shot. And handicap, it's controlled aggression. It's much more aggressive move off the line, but it's a smaller move, right? So if you're making that long single stroke at handicap, which I've been doing lately, because my singles have been, just really, really good these last couple of years, I've noticed that I'm being too methodical with my barrel and handicap. I'm getting too slow, and I'm getting too methodical. And, if you put me on a Kansas target that's nice, or, another target that's floating in the middle of the air, Utah, something like that, well, then you can get away with that and point them out and break a high handicap score. But if you're shooting Florida, Sparta, any of these places where you've got, some pepper on that target, you've got to get that gun through the bird. And a lot of times we talk, Ricky, about pushing and driving through the target. Mm-hmm. And I feel like I have to use more muzzle energy at 27-yard line than I do at 16 or at doubles. And so other things that I did to practice were, shooting wobble, making the targets a lot faster. That's something that I'll still do, making the targets a lot slower, just changing variation, and also changing distance drills. One drill I learned from Kay was just starting at the 16-yard line and then working back all the way to the 27 and working all the way forward. So just working back and forward, changing the distance, not changing the shell, and learning what it takes to be able to make that target break at the end of the gun. So any and all of that stuff is integrated in my practice now, and I think it's the most important part of the game. And I am like a mega target shooter. I mean, I got 210,000 registered targets along with, a bunch of practice. So, I don't know. I'm probably getting close to 500,000 birds. I mean, at 31 years old. So,
yeah, and that's one of the things I know. We shoot a lot together. We always shoot the prelim of the grand together, and a lot of shoots. And one thing I can tell everybody about shooting with Zach is Zach usually shoots when I'm leading off. He's always on usually post 2, and he does really good till he gets down to post 1 in doubles, and then he goes bang bang, bang bang.
And that's something that I'm currently working on.
Yeah, but you need to see that target before you shoot it. And that's where I think a lot of shooters, whether it be top shooters, average shooters, when they get going and they're shooting good, things start to speed up. And I do the same thing. I've done it in singles and you've seen it, where we're shooting good and all of a sudden, boom, you pull one back into the house like, okay, that's where the singles you were talking about, you always want to be more deliberate in singles. Then your handicap, I always say be a little more reckless.
Yeah, and that's what it is. It's just controlled reckless aggression at some level. And when I'm saying slow down in singles, I'm not saying look at the bead and point the target out. You're still going. You're just not throwing anything. And I think, the way I look at a field, I look at it like a large pizza slice. I'm looking at the right angle and the left angle, and then I'm looking at the height of the bird, and I'm trying to take that gun and put it down at the tip of that pizza slice at the section of where it's leaving the house. And I'm trying to let that target always be above my barrel. So I think where people get in trouble, especially in singles, is if you're on post 3 and you're holding down on the house and you get that straightaway, the tendency is to drive that gun up with that target and cover it up and shoot. But I feel like a lot of the times when you're doing that, that target's under a lot of spring. It's going its fastest. And as soon as you lose sight of the target, you're either going to want to lift your head or you're going to want to stop the gun. So, there's no reason, or both, right? Or both. and then you miss it and you're like, man, how did I miss that? I was all over it. Well, because your hand stopped, right? So it's one of those things where if you let that target come up to where you could see it, I'm wanting to keep that target above my barrel until the instant that I'm taking the shot. I don't ever want that barrel to get above the plane of the bird and break the plane of the bird, because that's where you lose sight, and that's where you start to put doubt into your game. Now, as I'm closing the distance and shooting, obviously, the target is disappearing at some level, but it's the very last thing before I pull the trigger I see is target zipping away and I'm blowing it up.
Yeah. Well, and that's the one thing is trigger control. That's one of the main things is shooting the target where it's at, not where it's supposed to be. And we could talk about that all night on, windy conditions and such. But yeah, and that's one thing is, Zach, you've been shooting a long time. You got a lot of credentials, won a lot of stuff. We'll elaborate real quick at the end here on your non-registered 100 straight at the old Martinez Gun Club.
I remember it.
I did break a 50 straight at Martinez Gun Club, and I think it paid me like $7,000 for the middle 50. Something crazy. So when I heard Zach broke 100 at Martinez, I mean, I was like, oh, he is making money. And everybody's like, oh, yeah, he played the money, And then I got the phone call from Zach. I didn't play the perfect 50s.
You know how hard Martinez
What did I teach you? What did I teach you?
Always play the money. So at the time, I wasn't shooting great handicap, and I was just like, okay, I'm gonna go to Martinez and we're gonna see what happens. And I played everything because I'm like, I can compete here. But the perfect 50s, I mean, if you've shot Martinez, I mean, Jeremy Summers, I mean, I remember Stu Welton went down there, shot 100 birds, and then got in his car and left, and he never came back. And it's one of those things where if you haven't shot Martinez, you go down there and check it out and see what they got to offer. But Ricky, when he came down, broke that perfect 50, broke an 88 on that. So
89.
So 89 with a perfect 50.
Yeah.
So this place, you can go from, shooting a target where you're like, okay, I'm on it, to the next trap, you take a 19.
You're like, am I in California or am I in Alaska?
It's one of the oldest gun clubs in America, if not the oldest. And the pads have warped upwards. So you're standing higher at the 27 than you are at the 16. So you're not level. And then there's a big old oil refinery out in front of you where there's tanker trucks moving and stuff. And then you've got a swirling bay wind that'll take the marsh. Marsh, right? That'll take the target up, take the target down. But what they do have is they give gold coins and they have money because nobody ever shoots there good. So these perfect 50s build up. And at the time I went there and, I just felt good. And that day I was really looking at the target and I broke 100 straight. And I'll never forget it because I think it was Vince Bianco Vince Bianco was there and he walked up to me and said, how do you shoot? And I said, I broke 100. And he says, you're crapping me. Well, watch my language, but he said it a little differently than that. And so he went and he found Rich Bullard. And Rich Bullard, he asked, how'd he do? And he said, how'd you do, Rich? And he said, he had a 90. And Rich was like, I was happy with it, right? Like you break a 90 and you're happy with it at Martinez.
Yeah.
He was like, I had a 90. And he points at me and I'm just over there grinning ear to ear with my bag on and I'm smiling. And he says, well, the kid beat you by 10. And he said, what? And it's like, yeah, beat you by 10. And I said, well, I mean, I got lucky. Now I followed that with an 88. So that being said, we had 100 and an 88 in that handicap. Just to tell you, same day, 200 handicap. Yeah. That's what type of place we're dealing with.
Now, what shoot was that? Was that the Easter Grand or the Firecracker 400?
That was the Firecracker 400. So I'm on the wall for my 100, but I'm not on the wall for the overall champion like you are, Rick. Because and I shot the high score for the deal, but this other guy tied me from the 20-yard line, same score as me, and we went out and shot off, and I went 24-24 in the shoot off, and he went 24, missed the first spurt out, and went 25. And so he went back 49 straight and won it, but hey, it is what it is.
That Martinez gives a lot of cool stuff. Greg Famey is the manager there. At least he still was, as far as
Yeah,
I know. You
No,
know,
Greg runs a
and
great club.
yeah, and we ought to, what we ought to do is we ought to go back sometime. I've shot the Easter Grand and the Firecracker 400, and it is a great time. And you can make a little bit of money. They still have some good money there. But
I'm definitely going to go out again for sure. It's one of my favorite shoots. It's 400 handicap, non-registered. Nobody wants to register their scores there. That's for sure.
hey, I remember the Easter Grand, the first one I went to, it was registered, and I averaged 89.5 at the 400. I won the overall. Dave averaged 89. And I said, this is registered? And Dave's like, yeah. And I was like, damn. But you know what? I don't shoot for an average. Even though, last year I was the high average, I don't shoot. I literally, just like you, we go to shoots, we're there to shoot.
There to shoot, win, have a good time, hang out with your buddies, and that's definitely one that I recommend going to. But
absolutely,
that was probably the best score I've ever shot in my life, just because
of where it's
at. And the other thing that I like about it is I'm the only color photo on the wall in the 100 straights. The last photo was a black and white, and it was Benillas, and it was back when the gun club was completely different, So I mean, I'm the only guy that has done it in the last, I don't know, 30 or 40 years. Right. So, that was a good one. But
on that note, Zach, we'll wrap this up. And do you have any sponsors you'd like to thank?
Yeah. First of all, I want to thank all the people that got me there. So, you, Sean, Kelly, Bob Graves, Tim Silvera, my mom and dad, obviously. My mom, being the brunt support, my dad, making the money, slinging the paint, and going around there and being my squad mate. I also want to thank my wife, Beth, for putting up with me traveling around the country. I mean, that's not easy. And I'm not really the nicest person when it comes to shooting time, and I'm always on the road. So that's, that's something. I want to thank my sponsors, Remington, Krieghoff, Wenig for sure. They've had my back since day one, and they've never, ever let me down, and they've created a great product for me. Also, the Spruill family at Pro Mold, they do my earplugs. So appreciate them. Tommy and Judy Tison at Gateway Gun Club for always giving me a place to shoot and let me have the keys and taking care of me. So, and RM shooting clinics. I mean, hey, you guys, you help me out. I mean, whenever I'm having a problem, you help me out. And Dave is the same way. I remember, just to kind of piggyback to that first 100 straight story, I was shooting bad handicap going into that event, and I needed it because I was at the time traveling around in my Honda CRV, sleeping in the back of it, and I was running low on options money. And this was the last Sunday's event, and I had everything in my wallet on that handicap, and I needed gas money to get home. And Dave took me to the practice trap, and he said, "Your head's too low, and you're moving on the call," and spent 3 rounds with me working on fixing it and fixed it. It gave me his time. This is a competitor, right?
Yeah.
And I go out and I run 100 straight and I went over 10 grand. And it was like, I couldn't have done that without him, right? I wouldn't have gotten that first 100 straight there. So I think you've got to look back and say, thank you to those people that have put that sacrifice and that time and that effort in. And I think that's a lot of the reasons why I want to do this show, is just to get people excited about it and get people in a position where they can learn and they can grow, and we can share this as a community, because there's not a lot of resources out there as far as what the greats are doing. And there's a lot of learning curve. And I think if you could shorten that learning curve, that's a good thing. So,
absolutely.
I appreciate everyone that's been involved with that journey.
Yeah, no. And that's one of the reasons that I'm co-hosting this with you. Today being the host, but co-hosting with you is we can, I teach lessons all over the world and stuff, but just to give a little information here and there, shortcut for people, unlike me, I mean, it was a whole different, era back in the 80s starting, so, well, with that, we'd like to thank our show sponsors, Wenig Custom Gun Stocks, Remington Arms, and then we'd also like to thank Shot Tracker. We'd like to thank Zach Nannini Financial, and RM Shooting Clinics.
The one and only.
That's right. If you guys need anything, got any questions, forward them in. We'll answer them. Well, you think we need someone on the show that we haven't put on there, let us know. With that,
please do. It's been a fun show, Rick. Thanks
Yep.
for interviewing me and being a great host today. And I look forward to our next guest next Friday. So we're gonna keep it rolling, getting into the shooting season, and we'll see you soon, bud.
Absolutely. See you later.
Thanks for tuning in to Trap Talk.